Well, thank you very much. This is very interesting, and I'm glad to be part of this. Thank you very much for inviting me to share with you as an Iranian academic to mention some point. I listened carefully to the participants' remarks. I think the whole point is that the nuclear deal from the Iranian side was an examining point for further talks and making confidence building between Iran and the West and at the top with the US to solve some strategic discrepancies on the regional issues. I believe that the regional issues and missile issues have always been more significant than the nuclear issues, because the nuclear issue could be reversed at any point, and Iran did that. But the regional issues and missile issues are related to the deterrent issues and the security of the state of Iran. Therefore, from the Iranian perspective, this issue is much more significant, and packaging the triangle of, or relating the nuclear issue with the regional issues and missile issues are, I think, irrelevant because if you have the nuclear issue revived, then naturally the regional talks will come. And I believe that the precondition for any regional talks is to reviving the nuclear, issue and the JCPOA. And it is very important to be understood that the point is exactly this. And I think Iran is not to afford to retreat from the region or lose any of its field influence unless it makes some confidence building with the West and at the top with the US and solving its, sense of strategic insecurity that Iran has from the US side. And you should understand also that the regional, some might say that Iran is expansionist towards the regional issues and it is expanding its influence in a way. But from the Iranian sides, it is perceived as regional problems. And we should not forget that the regional developments brought about a lot of problems for Iran, not just the US military bases across the Iranian borders, is really threats of using the Arab states' space to attack Iranian nuclear facilities. And at the top, the threats of Daesh and other terrorist groups that have somehow encircled Iran. Therefore, I think it is very important to understand that how much the progress of the JCPOA and reviving of it will positively enhance, regional stability on the Iranian side, and how much Iran would involve itself in a meaningful way to somehow, in a constructive way, engage itself with the regional talks, because Iran has this geopolitical superiority and it will think that it will not lose on any regional talk. Of course, the missile issue is completely different, and I believe that it should be separated from any packaging of this triangle, because that's a red line as a matter of Iranian prestige and a national defense strategy. Iranian will never go in that way. And that is a political consensus inside Iran, I believe, even amongst the Iranian nation. Therefore, I think it is very important that we understand that how much the reviving of the JCPOA will enhance regional stability. And I think it is an opportunity right now that the two sides go in that direction and try to reach to a kind of agreement that can be acceptable for both sides. And that could relieve Iran from this sense of strategic insecurity. And I tell you that, the big mistake of the Trump administration was that it thought, and its allies thought, especially Saudi Arabia and Israel, that by weakening Iran from inside, they could take Iran on the negotiating table. And it was wrong. I think and strengthening Iran will better talk. A powerful Iran that has political consensus inside its factions will better talk. And that was a big mistake. And I hope that Joe Biden administration will not go in that regard. And that led, I mean, the maximum pressure policy led to maximum presence policy of Iran in the region in a more effective way, even by assassinating of Commander Soleimani, that some believe that Iran's activity is much less right now. But I think Iran is pointedly trying to be present in the region in a more effective way. And you could see that how much the field is important by, is perceived significant by the Iranian elites. And the supreme leader mentioned this in a very obvious way. And that is very much important. And I think this will go ahead with the Iranian policy in that regard. The second benefit of the reviving of the JCPOA would be Iran-Saudi talks. I think we have the negotiation right now, and I think it could go ahead if it is in the context of case, solving crisis like the Yemeni crisis, in the context of bilateral talk between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iranian will be happy to go ahead with that, and the Iranian mentioned that they will talk with Saudi Arabia in any circumstances, but they will not talk with the US and the West. And by the way, I think that the Iranian, and it is a bitter reality right now, and it was mentioned by Barbara that the Iranian are sympathetic towards the West. They are not. I think they realized the Trump administration made this terrible sense of Iranian that they wanted and they hoped in an accommodative way to get, to negotiations for a better future, but the US betrayed them. Therefore, it is becoming, in a way, not institutionalizing a sense of anti-Western, sentiment amongst the Iranian nation, that it's coming by, and it was strengthened by the European betrayal of the Iranian by not implementing their promises. I think this is very strong inside Iran right now, and we should not just think that nothing has changed after the Trump administration. Many things have changed, and Iran has changed. I think the expectation is high right now. Therefore, the second point is that the negotiations, the success of the nuclear negotiations will bring about good relations with Iran and Saudi Arabia. And I think Iran could use its field influence to solve the issue in Yemen. And unlike of some views in the West that Iran does not have that much influence on the Yemenis, forces, friendly forces, I think Iran has. And I think Iran is ready to, solve the issue for the sake of bringing stability for the region, of course, in the interest of Iran. Every country would do that. And I think Iran is ready to go in that regard. And I mentioned another point that Iran in substance and as a foreign policy conduct believes that, the security in the Persian Gulf, for instance, that was something Ali mentioned that I think it wasn't a very, good point, that in substance, Iran accepts the security of the region should be collective. And it respects that. And it was mentioned by Iran, and Iran was part of any opportunity and giving any, initiative to, to give some plans like the HOPE plan, that is the Hormuz Peace Endeavor plan, that the Iranian wanted to show their, their positiveness by bringing, non-intervention, non-subversion, as Barbara believes, non-intervention issues. Therefore, I think that it is important. I'm sorry, some technical difficulty here in Tehran. So it is very important to understand that how much Iran accept the fact and the realities of the presence of other power in the region, but Iran is trying to somehow diversifying the presence of other actors in the region to somehow restrict the US hegemonic ambition in the region. I think Iran would like to see, Russia, China, India, every country in the Persian Gulf. And it will accept the reality that other countries have interest in the region. But the fact is that Iran would like to see it in a regional context and in a kind of regional way that can somehow preserve regional interest with local solution. And, the approach that other powers have monitoring, presence in this collective endeavor. My last point is that I think that JCPOA will bring a kind of, regional multilateralism, which will bring, sustainable stability for the region. I believe that, some believe that Iran and the US have, strategic common interests in the region, but I think that this is not true. I think they have a lot of strategic discrepancies in the region because a regional power will never allow a big hostile superpower to come to it across its border. Therefore, this level of tension, a degree of tension will exist between Iran and the US and the Western countries so far as they deny Iranian regional role, like what China and Russia thinks about the US in the different part of the world. I think it is enough for me. I stop here. I thank you again for giving me this opportunity to talk.